Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thriving Relationship Show. I am Christine Eartheart, your host and the founder of the Center for Thriving Relationships. And I am so grateful you are here and to get to support you in experiencing more love, connection, and understanding in your relationships. And if you are currently in a romantic relationship, or if you ever have been, you've probably noticed that in your relationship, more emotions tend to come up than probably any other area of life. And maybe you haven't always known what to do with all these big emotions, how to navigate them, how to express them in a way that is actually helpful and healthy for ourselves and for our partners. Or maybe you've been the partner or you've been in a relationship with a partner who has a really hard time even knowing what they feel, let alone how to share that with you. And you've longed to really have that emotional connection and depth. Well, I'm so excited to into all of this and so much more. And you are in the right place because I have the great honor and delight of introducing you to Rick William, today's guest. And Rick considers his mission to be helping others live emotionally connected and meaningful lives and to popularize emotional wealth. I love that so much. So that we can rise up, share our gifts, and create heart-led solutions to end suffering on this planet. So good. Rick helps support conscious high performers master their internal states. They can create real freedom in life, relationships, and business. Rick is a certified trauma-informed coach, breathwork facilitator, and he uses a combination of personal development tools and innovative life and business strategies to help his clients achieve results. And he now is living in Costa Rica, and he has some adorable pups there, and he shares his work all around the world. And I just feel in connecting with him this incredible strength and power, and also so much heart and so much depth. And so honored and thrilled to have you here. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you so much, Christine. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much. So in learning more about your journey, it sounds like a passion earlier on was really the world of physical fitness, which is awesome. And that it also was evolving and you started to prioritize more and more what you call emotional fitness. So I'd love to learn more because, of course, emotional connection is such an important part of a relationship. So if you can share more about that evolution and why you now value emotional fitness, like what is that and why is it so important?
That's such a great question. And yeah, well, I guess to start the story, in the beginning of my life, like many men and many women, we go out into the world, and I went out into the world, and I tried to create a life for myself that would bring me fulfillment and happiness. And on that pursuit, I thought if I got a great body and I got in great shape and great health, that would bring me happiness. Now, that brought me energy, but it didn't bring me happiness. So I kept on my quest, and I continued to build a business, and that business was in the health and fitness industry in the UK, and grew a big business. And, I thought that was going to bring me happiness and fulfillment, and it didn't. I'd climbed this, what I call the first mountain. And the first mountain is around external success. It's about creating physiological safety in the world, maybe making resources so that I felt safer. Maybe there's a part of me that was, going to the gym to kind of be stronger so that I felt safer in the world based on, my experiences that I had as a child. And, I hadn't dealt with my trauma or any of my inner world by that point. I was really just adapting, some ways healthily, some ways unhealthily, to the situations that had happened in my life. And by the time I was 24, 25, I'd already been meditating for a little while by this point, thanks to some teachers and mentors, and really began diving deeper inside and really getting to ask some bigger questions. And on that pursuit, I found the second mountain, and the second mountain being fulfillment, connection, and contribution. And it's been a whole journey into that. And really, I really began to understand this kind of really holistic, intertwined connection between everything, because there is a need for us to go out into the world and create physiological safety and have wealth and feel safe in our bodies and all of those things. But for me now, without it being founded in love and connection, like relationship really is for me the beauty of life. In fact, it's the reason that I do my work, because of the relationships that I get to help. It's the reason that I'm inspired to be a better human being so that I can show up better in my intimate relationships, so I can improve my communication, so I can have more intimacy, so my sex can be better, so the sex that I get to give, and in fact, I don't even call it sex anymore, I call it lovemaking, and that's really what it is. It's this shift that I got to go on in my own personal journey, and now getting to, you know, help support other people through that work, much like what yourself and your beloved is doing, is just so deeply fulfilling. And yeah, it's that's the meat and potatoes of my story anyway.
Oh, I love hearing the evolution. Also, you paint the picture of all the different benefits. You know, people might be thinking like, dive into my inner world, learn my emotions. Ugh, I don't want to do that. And look at all the goodness that comes from it. So thanks for speaking to that. And so beautiful that you live this, what you share so much. And, you know, it seems like one of your passions is also helping men in particular, you know, all humans and men really connect to their hearts and to their emotions, because maybe there are men out there that feel like I don't really have emotions, or it's not safe, or not strong, or masculine, all the things. So can you share a little bit about that, kind of your perspective on that, and why some men have disconnected from their hearts and emotions, and why it's so important in our lives and our relationships that we come home?
That's such a great question, Christine. I'll start by saying that I think it's very old. I think the reason why we as men, I'm going to speak as a we, I don't normally do this here. I do believe, as this part of our species, that we've been through a lot in terms of physical action in the world. And if we look at most of our ancestors would have had to go through wars. I know my grandfather did, and you know, my father was a firefighter, and he's seen a lot. And there is this adaptation, I believe, to shut down from specific emotions in order to be able to deal with the harsh reality of life. So I think this has been encoded for a long time. However, I think it also comes, and I think there's beauty in that, there's love in that. You know, men have fought wars to protect their children and women. I know there's a dark side to it, but I do believe it's rooted in love and in protection. I think that's the beautiful light side and quality of that kind of masculine out in the world nature. However, it comes with its own set of problems, because, you know, if we're looking at raising children, or we're looking at connection and intimacy, then it really has us lack those abilities to be able to connect in our life. And if we actually look what life is really an emotional experience. Everything is an emotional experience. The reason we do anything, every marketer knows this, we'll have heard this, you know, the reason that we buy with emotion, we reason with logic. And every advert, every newspaper is aware of these psychological principles, and that's because our experience is emotional. So if we are disconnected from our emotions, we're also disconnected from the quality of our life moment by moment. So the reason I'm so passionate about helping men is because, firstly, I was very disconnected from my emotions, and I went on that journey and I reconnected, and it completely changed my life. It also allowed me to understand what my needs were in relationships, because when I was disconnected, I didn't know what I needed. I just thought I got to work, and I wasn't able to connect to my needs, express those to my partner, which then creates a whole host of problems, because then my partner or my past partners would feel disconnected. They wouldn't feel like I was expressing or letting them into my world, and that would create a whole host of different problems. It would create problems in areas of purpose, like how do I know what to do in my life if I'm disconnected from my emotions? How do I know what actually lights me up? How do I know what I'm passionate about? How do I know what drives me? There's this whole world that exists within us. And the more we can connect to that, the better quality of life we have across the board in every domain, relationships, in our work, our mission, in our health, mental health, physical health. It's just this gateway into everything else. You know, it's this whole human experience that we get to experience. And really, emotion is at the root of that.
So lovely. And I appreciate just your compassion for the human experience, like these adaptations that we make. Like no one's to blame or to judge ourselves from the different ways that we've adapted really brilliantly. Some ways there are just better strategies for doing that. So I love that. And hearing how much love is really at the heart of what moves you and inspires you now is for us to be more connected and to show up in all areas of our lives in a way that has much greater impact for the world, for the greater good of all. So lovely, Rick. Thank you so much. So you have this quote, speaking of love, that I just adore, that I want to share. In order to be in a loving intimate and honest relationship, your self-love must be greater than your need to be loved. So I imagine this is very connected to this, like getting to know our emotions and embracing them rather than pushing them down or judging them, all the things. And that quote really jumped out to me. It's so exquisite. And I'm wondering if you can share more and even maybe an example of what it might look like if a relationship, if somebody in a relationship is experiencing an absence of self-love, and how does it transform when someone really begins to give themselves the love they're really longing for? Or in your own words, what does that look like?
Such brilliant questions. And yeah, I think it's really important that our self-love is greater than our need to be loved. And the reason that I feel that's important is because as long as I'll speak for myself, as long as I'm trying to get something in the relationship, then I'm moving into a space of either subtle manipulation or trading. And I don't know about you or anyone listening, but to me, trading feels more like business than it does like love. So in order for me to actually have something to give another, I must have an abundance of it. I must have an overflow of it so that I feel that I have the capacity to actually be able to gift it. And then the giving of it actually feels like a gift. And it was this huge transformation in my life, Christine. It's honestly one of the most beautiful things. Like, honestly, one of the most beautiful things in my journey has been able to be in a position where I have enough love inside my own heart that when I'm giving it to another human being, it doesn't feel like I'm giving anything. It feels like I'm receiving. It literally feels like and I heard, it sounds like a trope that the gift is in the giving. I'd heard that, but I never really had that felt experience of what that meant until much later in my life. And it's been the most beautiful thing. And that's really what I would want for anyone else. It's like the level of connectivity that I get to experience and love in my life and relationships, and just like actually getting to experience that has been so profound that it's an honor that I get to do this work. It's why I'm so passionate about what I get to do, because I'm sure you've experienced this obviously in your life with your beloved and also with the clients that you're helping. I know that you're also super passionate about this work. So also want to know, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like what is your take on that?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. And I love what you're sharing, your own experience of feeling such an overflow of love, such an abundance of just this beingness of love, that the giving is the receiving. And I so hear like that seeming like an abstract thought, and then getting to really experience the pure joy of that. And yes, yeah, that relationship between self-love and our capacity to really love others it's so beautiful and so connected. And I find it also can happen in the reverse, right? When we really can cultivate a very loving relationship with another, the voice we hear from our beloved can also help override maybe some of our inner critic and like the self-judgment and shame, all the things we've had. So I love how connected they are. And yeah, if we're not fully loving ourselves, then I find, we could be surrounded, by people who think the world of us and have so much love and so much care to give. And if we're not experiencing that on the inside, it won't stick. It'll just be like a bucket with a whole lot of holes. And that's one of the tragedies. What moves me so much to do this work is very rarely is there an absence of love in any way of relating, or, that's available for all of us. There's definitely not an absence of love, that's here to bring healing and comfort and connecting us to ourselves and to one another. And how much we miss out on, how much we miss out on receiving when we're not giving that to ourselves, and how much we miss out on being able to offer others, and to do it in a way that it just feels like there's so much here that I want to share it, and getting to share love with you and see it light you up, instantly lights me up. So yes, I'm all for what you're sharing.
Beautifully put.
Thanks so much, Rick. So, purpose is another area of passion. You support people around their purpose a lot. And in relationships, I oftentimes find that it's really easy if we're unfulfilled in our personal lives to not even be able to distinguish, am I unfulfilled here or am I unfulfilled in my relationship? If we're just really stressed in our lives, it's easy to think my relationship is stressful. We're dissatisfied, or my relationship is dissatisfying. And I'm wondering, in your work with people around purpose, that kind of relationship that you've discovered is that when people are longing for more of that, how that spills over into the relationship, and also when people reconnect to their purpose, how it transforms the relationship.
Such a great point. And the interplay between the two, right? It's like, we have these multifaceted lives. And I do think that there is an incredible correlation between, when we are dissatisfied in our relationship to being dissatisfied in our purpose and vice versa. Now, what I found in my life and what I see in my clients is that normally the two are happening simultaneously. I rarely find someone, I don't know if you've had this experience, that is really fulfilled in work, but really unfulfilled in the relationship. I'm sure that correlation does exist, but the pattern that I frequently see is that normally the two are coexisting together, which is why I really enjoy getting to the root of things. And it's why I'm so passionate about, the emotional work and the inner work, is because when we can start to cultivate something that is deeply meaningful in our mission or in our relationship, the same skill set applies to these other areas of life. So once you've been able to master that to a high enough degree in your relationship, if that's maybe a higher area of mastery for you, you're just applying that same skill set to something that is meaningful in a work pursuit, because you're connecting to yourself, you're working out why this is meaningful to you, you're using relationships and relationships building to build whatever that project might be, whatever, because a business is essentially at the foundation of it is really relationship, right? Business is just relationships with people who are trading you, money in exchange for services or products, so on and so forth. So when you've mastered one area, you simultaneously begin to learn the skill set to master the other. And I'm really passionate, especially, because I do predominantly work with men, probably about 90% of my clients are men. I work with a few women. I think when a man can feel proud of his work and he is lit up in that area of his life, then I think there is certain attraction elements that come into play, to get to see your partner, whether it be a man or a woman, shining in their work, seeing them passionate about what they're doing, seeing them lit up, seeing them help serve other people, whatever community or business they're running. I think there's something that is inherently very sexy about that. We see that in our partner. We're like, oh my God, like it's almost like you get to see them in new eyes, in that new context. It can be a reminder, I think, of, the spark that got you together, and can keep that spark and that spark flame, that it's like we need to fan that flame and be conscious about how we are intentional about how we are keeping love alive, not just expecting love to naturally emerge, but allowing and creating certain practices and embodying certain areas of our life to make sure our health is well, to make sure our meaning is well, to make sure we're fulfilled, so that we're this total complex human being, and we're not just deriving love and meaning and connection from one area of our life. I call these meaning vehicles, which are essentially, I explain them to men like investments. I'm like, if you had, when you're diversifying your investment portfolio, you would not just put all of your investments into one area. That would be really unwise. You would diversify it. So you want to diversify your meaning and your love and your connection in your life, much like that. So you have your friendships, so you have your meaningful work, so you have your relationship, so you maybe have your pets or your animals, and maybe you have a nonprofit. You have these different areas of your life that fill you up, so that you're not just deriving everything that you need from this one particular area, which can put a lot of pressure on a person. It can put a lot of pressure if, one person is the sole source of love and connection and meaning. So yeah, that's why I think purpose is so important.
I love what you're saying. And even just these different needs to be aware of, these different areas that we long to feel fulfilled, and not to look to our relationship solely for our source of life satisfaction. And also, I heard you say earlier, people that maybe are disconnected from their hearts or from their feelings might not even know what their needs are. And so what's an example? What might that look like if someone is really disconnected from their needs? What would be some symptoms on the surface? So anybody that's listening right now, they're like, I don't know. Do I know my needs? Do I not? What might it look like on the surface?
It's a great question. Well, I think how that would look on the surface, when I meet people, let's look in the opposite direction, that know their needs, then when they're in relationship, generally they have a vision for the relationship. They have parameters and boundaries. They could be soft and hard boundaries that are communicated with one another so that you have an understanding of what works and what doesn't work. It's not just this vague, open, kind of unconscious agreements. There's more intentionality put behind like what works, what doesn't work. And that's generally the symptoms that I see people who are expressing their needs. And then on the flip reverse, people who aren't expressing their needs might be experiencing, feeling resentment to their partner, feeling maybe envious of other people or their partner. It might come across sometimes as snapping at your partner. These types of things, because essentially those, I believe, are symptoms. I believe pretty much every painful or negative experience that we have as human beings is in fact a messenger. It is in fact a signal. And if you can get into the data of that signal, I think it is our body, our consciousness, our spirit, our psyche, however you want to put it, is trying to communicate something with us. And when we can understand what that thing is, what that trigger is, from that space, this data, and then we can start to find solutions for whatever that trigger is. So if you're snapping at your partner, if you're feeling envious of your partner, if you don't even know what you need, if Christine was to ask you, what do you need in a relationship to make it work, and you don't have a set of answers, or you haven't got that written down anywhere, then that's probably a sign that you're not super aware of your needs, or you're maybe not having your needs met. And then that's the invitation. It's not a bad thing if you're in that position. I know I've been there for sure, as I'm sure many other people have. So if you're in that position right now, awesome. You get to create the framework from here. You get to build what your needs are. You get to do the inner work to discover your own heart. And that's going to be a beautiful journey of self-discovery. And then you get to create your relationships from that space. And that's really exciting. So even if you're listening to this right now and you're like, I don't really have that, or maybe I don't really have that so much, like, that's brilliant. That's a really cool place to be, because you're in the most fertile ground to actually create it.
So good. I love you highlighting the opportunity in that. And those are such good symptoms as kind of resentment, envious, if you're just snapping at your partner. So if that's happening for anyone, this is not bad, wrong. It's just something wanting to kind of get our attention and wake us up that there's something that really wants tending to. And so if somebody's wanting to really get in touch with what their needs are, what their feelings are, and I see this a lot in the work that we do with couples. One partner, looks to their partner like, if you could just tell me what you need, I'm here and I want to support you. And the person doesn't really know. I don't really know what I'm feeling. And it's not because they don't want to share. They truly have just gotten disconnected. And for those of you out there that have a really easy time expressing your feelings and needs, this can be really hard to relate to. And it can be really easy to perceive someone not sharing that as, you're just blocking me out, or you don't care enough, when that's not what's really going on. And so a lot of us just haven't learned, what needs are, where are they, how do we find them, how do we express them? So anything that you want to share about, working with clients, your own journey of how people can really begin to learn like what our needs are and how do we express them, and how do we connect them to what we're really feeling?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it really starts, at least it starts for me, and it's in the same process with my clients, is, well, before I dive into that, we've got to look at where the root of this is coming from. And this will be really useful for both parties. So if you're really good at expressing your needs, this might help you empathize a little more. Or if you're not so good at expressing your needs, this is normally where it comes from. Sometimes it's different, but as a generalization, this is generally where it comes from. in that essentially, if when we were children, and we could talk about attachment styles and all of these beautiful things too, but when we're children, essentially we are communicating unconsciously what our needs are. Now, if we haven't had a very attentive caregiver, mother or father, because of, could be work, it could be many different reasons why they weren't able to be really attentive emotionally. Maybe they never learned that skill set of really how to, really how to be intimately with another. Maybe they didn't have that skill set, many different reasons. And we didn't get giving those codes, or we didn't have that experience, then we can sometimes just be kind of numb and be like, oh, like I kind of don't have needs because I've not had that experience of being able to express my needs and having them met. Because when I expressed my needs unconsciously as a child, it was so painful to not get them met time after time after time after time, which is when you hear babies crying. The baby's not crying for no reason. They're trying to communicate a need, but they just don't have the language to communicate it yet. It's not that they're not intelligent beings, very intelligent beings, but they just haven't learned how to communicate yet. So if during that process that needs have chronically been unmet or just frequently unmet, or maybe when you did express your needs, when you did have communication, you were shut down for that, or parents were busy, or you were shouted at or punished. It could just be one time or 10 times, and that landed for you and that was impactful for you, then generally needs get shut down. So then how do we rebuild needs back up? Well, the way to build that back up in my process is by learning to and uncovering that relationship with our inner child, with ourself, with our hearts, and starting to meet our own needs, to get curious about what they might be. And honestly, like when that inner connection is created, it's almost like our needs start to come out. We start to notice them. We start to honor them. We start to value ourselves enough to have needs, because we start doing that to ourselves. We start learning that, and then we start expressing them to others. And then we see and have the experience of other people listening to our needs and wanting to meet them, which can be a big experience at first. And then getting to receive that and acclimate that experience into your nervous system, into your body, into your psyche, your psychology, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to name it. Then you get to have that experience. And eventually over time, you begin to learn that skill set. You start to notice what it is that you want. And then from there, you can start going on a whole new level of like, well, let's create a vision. Like, what would a relationship that really works for me look like? What would that feel like? How would all of these different scenarios, what would happen in that scenario for me? How would that feel good for me? How do we deal with conflict? How do we deal with, if one person loses their career, how do we deal with this? And then you can really start drilling down on what would feel good for you in all of these different situations, and really start to negotiate and communicate those with your partner and see if they fit for them. And then there's the whole other piece of like learning communication skills, I think, as well, is really useful in that, so that you can actually communicate with another and have them be able to feel understood, and for you also to be understood in your communication. I think that the communication skill set is also really important, but get those other pieces in play first, learn how to connect to yourself, learn how to start to notice your needs. And then maybe from that space, start to learn maybe NVC or circling or authentic relating, these different kind of communication practices. There's many ebooks and YouTube videos on how to do that. And you can maybe start implementing those with your partner, and that just makes things way easier from that space.
Oh, I love this. So thank you for just sharing so if someone's experiencing some of these symptoms, to realize we learned somewhere along the way that our needs, it wasn't safe, it wasn't okay to have them, to express them. So just to send out compassion to anybody that has experienced that, and how to turn towards those younger parts of who we are, and to really start giving those parts of us what they've been really longing for. So beautifully put. And then to share that with our partner. And I hear when that happens, right, that's where the magic is, when there's space for everyone's needs, and where we get really excited about supporting each other in those being met. So all so lovely, and you describe it so beautifully. Thank you so much. So when it comes to communicating, do you have some favorite ways of how to really express our needs, honor one another's needs?
I was fortunate. I went through many of the authentic relating trainings, and they were really helpful. There's also is it the Imago? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Yep. The Imago technique, I learned a little bit from them. I did a little bit of training with NVC, and I've took little bits from each. of those trainings, but they've been profoundly helpful. And what has been most helpful, I think, has been just to listen, reflect, and share impact. There's this beautiful technique that you can do where if you're in some type of conflict or there's a challenging conversation, that you set the groundwork for that conversation. And a part of that is, okay, the person who is maybe more in a trigger shares first. And then once they're sharing, after the share, you listen to them intently. And instead of just immediately responding, you first reflect and share impact. Sorry, you first share what you heard. So you go through everything that they said. So it might be, what I'm hearing is that so on and so forth, A, B, and C, the dishes weren't done and that really had an impact on you. It was really causing you stress. And from here, that really set your day up in a way that didn't feel so good. And then you got in the car and you went in the car and there was still a cup in the car that I'd left there, and that just really made the space not feel good for you. You really enjoy getting into a clean space, and that really sets your day up in a beautiful way, so on and so forth. And then that allows the person to feel really heard and really understood. And normally by that point alone, like when someone reflects and has listened to the stuff I've said, normally by that point, whatever charge I had is normally gone. And then we can move into like sharing impact, or there's other techniques where you can ask the other person, like, what is it you need in this moment? And they might say, well, I would really like you to reflect. I'd really like you to come up with a resolution on how this might be avoided in the future. And you kind of just have this framework, which really helps, especially in more heightened situations. And especially when it's practiced in lesser situations, then when the tougher situations come, it's like you've done the training. You've got the training wheels on, because soon as our nervous system gets activated, which is a trigger response, essentially our prefrontal cortex is shutting down. We're less present, we're less aware, and more of our primal parts are activated, and we're less able to make effective decisions. So that's really helpful. And to add to that, another piece, if you're able to, is actually to be able to find a way to connect before or breathe before you're having one of these situations, so you can allow your nervous system to regulate a little bit. And then after all of that is like coming back to connection, after you've had the conversation, after you've listened to your partner, after you've reflected, after you've shared, and you can ask as well, as a beautiful question, I'm just riffing on this, is like, is there more? That's such a beautiful thing to ask a partner when they're really just sharing everything, is there more? And then they share more. Is there more? And they share more. And this what can happen under that is just like, it lets it out. It removes whatever block was being created, and it moves it out of the relationship so that actual intimacy can occur. And when actual intimacy is there, that's when like amazing sex can happen, or amazing connection, or amazing love can happen from that space. But if we have all of these blocks between us, and me and my lover call them withholds. So we call them withholds. So it's like, oh, I've got a withhold right now. And it can be a little withhold, or it can be a big withhold. But normally those withholds actually prevent deeper connection. And I'd noticed that. I'd really noticed in my life, if I'm withholding something, and it could just be a little niggle, my ability to be fully open with my heart is it's dimmed a little bit.
Yeah.
So just by making sure that you're kind of cleaning out house, when we keep the house tidy, meaning when we keep the pieces that we might be withholding in the relationship, we keep the union, we keep the space between the you and the other clean, then that's when I think the most deep intimacy and connection and love and passion can actually exist. Curious on your thoughts on that.
So good. So good. I love what you were saying initially about the power of being heard, and how that alone just discharges so much. It's like, wait, what was that? What was that issue either? Anyway. And so I love that, the power of being heard, and how much that opens our hearts to one another, just knowing that someone is with us in it. And then this piece of like withholding, I love that. I tend to think, any place where withholding anything is a place where love and connection simply can't exist. And I think it's so easy for us to not even realize what we're withholding in relationships. So I love that so much. And so it's like, learning to know ourselves well enough to really share that, finding ways to communicate our feelings and our needs, whatever it is, whatever we're afraid to share, with our partner, finding a way to speak that in a way that makes it easiest to receive, and then learning to create a safe space, for one another so that it is inviting. Because some people, of course, stop sharing in their relationships. They do withhold because they're afraid that if they bring it up, maybe they will be blamed, criticized, shamed, all those things that, of course, the other person does out of their own pain and fear and shame, all the things. And so these are just such invaluable skills to learn. Identifying our needs, connecting to our emotions, learning how to share that effectively, learning how to hold space and receive one another in a way that leaves, us feeling really seen and witnessed, and that all of it is welcome. And then, yes, it leads to so much more of the magic of relationships. So big yes to all of that. It's so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what do you find? What are some of the common things that you've discovered that people tend to withhold?
It can be anything. It can be from as small as seeing your partner texting someone that you didn't know about. And, that can create a whole set of stories about like what you made that mean. And it can be something very innocent, but that can just be buried away. Or it can be bigger things. It can be, or it can be things around the home that just aren't working for you. It can be certain ways things are communicated that just don't work for you. I think there's a whole host of different things that can be withheld, and sometimes they're very nuanced. Sometimes it's just, the way something's said, or it might be an incongruence with some story that was shared once, and then the story shared a different way, and you're like, it was different that time, and there's some distrust that's created from that, and you start to create this story about what that meant to you, but really it can just be the fact that when we share things, it can be different, and we add different information and so on and so forth. So it's really just, allowing us to get to the truth of what is actually alive. And the beauty is when you share a withhold, there's a vulnerability in that too, because it might show you an area where you're afraid, or there might be a little fear there. And I think for a withhold to be shared effectively, it has to be owned. A withhold isn't blaming the other for it. It's like, I felt like just disconnected when I noticed that there was this coming up, and I know that you got our best intentions at heart, and, it's probably my own fears here, my love, and I'm just having this experience. Could you share a little bit about what was happening there for me? Just something like that. So you're sharing it from a place of ownership. You're not blaming the other when you're withholding. It's actually just like owning that piece and what it meant for you, which actually requires a level of vulnerability to actually do that.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And vulnerability, right, can feel really scary. And as a coach, I sense one of the incredible many gifts that you offer people is this invitation to really step outside of our comfort zone. So it isn't just let's find the easiest path. It's like the easiest path is maybe the known and will really limit us. And there's a whole world out here of possibilities, and it requires a stretch. And that's why having a coach is just so invaluable, to take ourselves deeper and further than we would go on our own. And so, this is all areas of life. And I know you support people in so many different life domains. And I think a lot of people in our relationships, those things feel scary. So it's really easy to settle and to think our relationship is good enough. And of course, we want to celebrate our relationship just as it is, and not to make it wrong or bad. And I think for a lot of couples too, it's when there aren't a whole lot of models out there of conscious, thriving relationships, it's really easy to think like, well, at least we're not as bad as so-and-so over there, which is so innocent and good contrast to have. And I think we also can really limit ourselves, what's really possible in our relating and connecting. And I wonder if you could just speak to that, and someone who is so masterful in kind of calling people forward and motivating, inspiring people to tap into what's possible beyond the kind of comfy, cozy place of what's known right now, to see like, oh my gosh, so much more is available for us in our relationships, life, any way that you want to speak to that. Why is it worth it? It's scary, but worth it.
Well, I think in life, like we are like nature. Well, we are a part of nature. So we're either growing or we're dying. And we have to have this balance between healthy growth. So, we have this idea that by staying the same, that there's safety in that. The idea, the concept is that this is a safe thing to do when in fact, actually time is moving by. And the more that time moves by, your perceived safety is actually becoming a danger or a threat for your relationship. So I would invite you, if you actually care about yourself and your partner and your beloved, and maybe your friends, your family, that actually taking a route of growth and healthy uncomfortability in your relationship is actually the water that will keep your relationship and your love alive. It's the most loving thing you can do for yourself, for your partner, for your community, for all those you're surrounded by. And if you have a desire to stay safe, it's the safest way to stay safe. Because if you're not doing that, that is where every single relationship problem will come from. It will affect your intimacy, your connection, your love to yourself, your love to your partner, what you're modeling to children or community. There's a whole host of people that are affected by that. And by staying in that comfortable position, you're limiting yourself, but you're also limiting what you can give. And if you're listening to this podcast, there is no shadow of a doubt in my mind that you're the type of person who, one, wants to grow, but who also wants to give. And I think as long as we can stay on that growth track, whether that be you have, calendared in, we do one workshop or retreat together as a couple a year, we, both work with a coach at least once a year, or we do something that is honoring the relationship, just like we would honor our work and our career. We would go on workshops and we would people find no worries to find a business mentor, but really often the reason that we're creating the business, often the reason we're doing many of these things in our life, if we actually look at it, is for love. And what a way to actually honor, I think one of the greatest gifts that it is to be human is to love, than to actually give it the water and the nutrients and the nurturing that I believe that it deserves.
So lovely. So yeah, any couple that is out there that is intrigued, oh, maybe our relationship could be even stronger, even more connected, even more intimate, even sexier, more alive, all the things. What wonderful words of encouragement of how it's so worth it to do that. So I'm curious to zoom out. This is the Thriving Relationship Show. What is a thriving relationship to you? What does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, a thriving relationship to me means one that is founded on just deep, both love, like this, they talk about the different levels of relationship, and there's a level 6 relationship, which is both, it has that deep friendship, but it also has the passion. So it has the polarity within it. And from that space, a thriving relationship for me is built on a shared vision of both individuals' needs, but also this greater connection of the union of, what actually gets to be created when both of those individuals are together. And I think that is the foundation of a thriving relationship. And there's so much in it that I would add to that, like just the idea of loving another truly as they are and getting to feel the gift of getting to give to that other, and then having that other be in that exact same space where they love giving to you. So it's this kind of beautiful cycle of giving and receiving, and both people feel nurtured and filled up, and really just having a vision upon which you're intentionally creating each phase and chapter of your life. If you go on my notes on my computer, on my phone, I literally have different areas of life. I have like a sexploration note where it's like different sex adventures and things I'm thinking of. We have like different areas of like relationship things that I want to do and experience, the vision of what I'm looking for and we're looking to create, and really just getting really intentional with all of these different areas of life, and how we can grow together, how we can really build a life that's one for us, but also for a greater community as well. But the impact that I think is really beautiful when a thriving relationship comes together. And I think you and your beloved are beautiful examples of this, Christine. I think there is an impact that transcends both of you, that leaves a ripple on communities online, on this podcast, because of the love you created, because of the inner work that you've done, because of everything that you put together in your life intentionally, and everything that it takes to build that it's really something that stretches outside of the relationship itself. And I think that's thriving, right? It's like it's growing, it's alive, it's impacting more than just itself. It's lighting other people on fire, just like a healthy ecosystem would, allow other trees and plants to flourish simultaneously. I think that is thriving.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's so many treasures in what you just shared, and your awareness of how we do this work, our own healing work, and then our strengthening of our relationships, how it really is a gift to the world, how it just spills over. It's so contagious too. We're thriving relationships in the best of ways. Like when we see like, oh my gosh, that kind of love, it opens that up for us too. I love what you just shared though. And it's so connected to what we were exploring kind of about needs. And that I just see it as such an upward spiral when we both are like delighting in supporting each other in our needs, and that kind of transcendent experience of love, where it is like when two people come together, it's so much more than just, 1 + 1, right? It's like this, it opens up our awareness of love and what we can co-create. We create something that is just so much bigger than either one of us. And I love too, just the visionary that you are, and how, you have accomplished so much in your life, experienced so much, and it's like never ending. Like you're writing down in your notes, like, oh, I want to try out these new things. And I just invite people out there who are goal-oriented, to make sure in our relationships, we're also doing that. So Rig's talking about, right? It's not, I'm sure you have tons of business goals, maybe health goals, lots of different areas of life. And in your relationship, you're like making note of these different things you want to do. And that really keeps that aliveness. I hear that, like having this solid foundation and then also keeping the passion alive. And both those things, they don't just happen on their own. There's no couple that if they just like wanted to coast, it would maintain. Like it's this living ecosystem. And so to always be nurturing it. You're just a perfect example of doing that, how you move through it with so much intention, so much courage and openness, so much heart. Is here you like just the importance of taking responsibility, not putting anything on our partner, and then always wanting to like grow into new realms together. So all of it, it's just what a gift for you to share that with us. And so what are other things, anything else that you want to share that, if a couple's out there, they want to grow, they're struggling, things that you found to be really helpful, any other gems of wisdom or anything on your heart?
I think what has been really helpful on my journey is there's a few things that if I could go back and I could speak to myself before I was at this point, there'll be a few things that I would say. And then these are things that I share with my clients as well. And that is really master the skill of communication, really, and not communication for business, communication in relationships, because really it's the foundation of everything. And I wish I could have gone back and give my 20-some-year-old self the skill set of how to relate in a relationship and just how impactful that would be. So the first thing I would say is learn to communicate. Find one of these schools, NVC, circling, authentic relating, or anything else in between, and really just learn to communicate. And for some people, these schools might not be something you stay with for a long time, but no matter what, I think it'll give you the foundational principles of communication. And from that, you can make it your own. You can really take that and make it your own. So that would be the first piece. The second piece would be do your own inner work, heal your own heart. I wish I could have started my healing journey earlier than I did, but everything is in perfect divine timing. And it was as it was needed in the time that I needed it. But to ensure that we're consciously taking responsibility for our own triggers and the things that are affecting us from being able to open and give our love. And I think when that perspective can be understood, maybe the reason that we don't go heal a lot of the time is because like, well, I'm not going to do it for me. Well, then don't do it for you. Do it for everyone else, because everyone else will benefit. When you're loving yourself more, when you've dealt with your triggers, when you have put more love into your own heart and you've communicated and understood your needs, you're actually going to be a better partner, like 100 times better partner. You're going to be able to experience more intimacy. You're going to make your partner feel more seen because you feel more seen. It's really hard to give something to someone else that you haven't given to yourself. Not impossible. Some people are gifted that way too, but for a lot of people, it's really hard to give something that you haven't given yourself. And even if that is the case and you're a natural giver, there's probably a point where you're going to be overgiving, and there's probably going to be the flip reverse on that, where you're not nurturing yourself. So we have to be in balance of giving and receiving, but making sure that we're doing our inner work, I think, is really, really crucial. And then thirdly, just having a beautiful vision, getting really intentional with your relationships. Like, you were just mentioning before, Christine, like putting as much into your relationship as you put into these other areas of your life. And I was definitely guilty of putting all my personal development into all of the other areas. And, I would have countless notes on courses from everything else. And they come to relationship and I was like, there's nothing there. And what I was really wanting was a thriving relationship. And I'm like, my actions aren't quite in alignment with my desires. And underneath that was the fears of actually having a really intimate relationship that was actually preventing me from doing that. That's a whole other story. But essentially, when I started doing that, when I started prioritizing relationship, it actually empowered all of the other areas of my life. It made me more powerful in my work and my mission. It made me have more energy in just my life, my health, and my vitality, because, that cup was being nurtured as well. So yeah, they would be the top 3 pieces for me.
Oh, thank you. Those are gems and essentials. And I love that you're just a living, breathing example of what happens when we really prioritize, when we really learn about relationships and communicating and all the inner healing work, and to really have a vision. That's really inspiring us and moving us forward. So good. Rick, there's so many things that you have just mastery around. I'm so grateful that we've been able to touch on a variety of them. And for people that want to learn more, I will personally say your Instagram account is so full of so many gems. So anybody that hangs out over on Instagram, be sure to follow him there. You post all the time, and just like these definite truth bombs that really can crack us open. And tell us more, your website, all the things. What do you want to share about the wonderful work and your service to the world?
Amazing. Thank you, Christine. Yes. So on Instagram, I am Rick Williams. So happy to connect with anyone on there. If there's been any little golden nuggets that you've had from this episode, I am fairly active on this, and I do respond to my DMs most of the time. So if you have listened to this episode and you've got a golden nugget somewhere in this, or there was something that was impactful, I'd love to hear from you. And then beyond that, the best place is really my website, and that's rickwilliam.com. And on there, I have a bunch of really powerful free resources. A lot of it's around the work with the nervous system. It's something that I really love. Train in polyvagal theory for anyone who knows what that is. If not, it's just advanced nervous system training for anyone else. And I have some exercise on there that can be really powerful for learning how to self-regulate, and also learning not just self-regulation, but also building resiliency. So there's an exercise that I have on there which has you go into a stress response and come back into connection, and then has you go into a shutdown response and come back into connection, so you can learn to deal with your triggers more effectively, more elegantly, and more usefully. And that's there as a free resource, amongst other workshops and all sorts of things. So whatever it is that you're looking to dive into, if it's in terms of the inner work, there's a bunch of resources there that you can get your hands on.
Okay, marvelous. We'll be sure to put all the links to all those goodies below for people to check out. Those are some really great free resources. And I know all the nervous system regulation that's in polyvagal theory. You are a wealth of resources and information. I am so grateful that you are in the world spreading love, doing what you do, and just really lifting humanity up to new possibilities. Thank you so much for joining us. Any final words or anything else that you want to share?
Just a big thank you, Christine. Thank you for all of the work you're putting out there in the world with your podcast, with your foundation, with your company, with your partner on your Instagram, and for everyone who's joining us on this journey, to live, more fulfilled lives and have more nourishing, thriving relationships. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here with us in this conversation, because it really is a conversation. We're all walking this path. We're all learning. We're all growing. And yeah, thank you for showing up and doing the work as well. It's for anyone listening.
Yes. Big cheers to that. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be sure to share how you can connect with Rick more, and cheers to, may we all just be in that upward spiral of growing love inside of ourselves that spills over to those around us and out into the world. So much love and blessings to everyone. Thank you so much. Want more support for your relationship, or want to become trained as a certified relationship coach to help other couples? we warmly welcome you to head on over to centerthrive.com. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you next time on the Thriving Relationship Show.